come to order.
Thank you, Sheriff. The first order of business this evening is our prayer, which will be led by Commissioner Edens, and our pledge will be led by Commissioner Ford.
Let's pray. Father God, we thank you, Lord, for your grace and your mercy that you bestow on us. We thank you, Lord, for loving us. We thank you most of all, Jesus, for sending your Son to die on the cross for us, to save our souls for the sins that we've committed, Lord. When we were unlovable, you loved us, and we thank you so much for that, Lord. Father, I pray for your discernment, for your guidance, for your leadership, and for wisdom as we conduct this county commission meeting tonight, and as we do the county's business, the taxpayers' business, that we be willing servants to you and to them. Father, that we do the very best of our ability to serve them and to accomplish the goals that this county needs to have to continue on and be vibrant. I ask all these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Let's honor America. Please.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Play ball. Banner up.
All right, Madam Clerk, let's go ahead and get our roll call done. If you'll indicate on the screen your presence here this evening. All right. We have 15 present, no absent. We do have a quorum. Next item is approval of our agenda. There's many items on there. Commissioner Wheeler?
Mr. Chairman, we have a number of people here tonight that are really here for two items, one of which is at the tail end of the agenda. And I'd like to make a motion that we move item 11VE from the Budget Committee to just before item 7 on the agenda, and that we also move item 11KC to immediately following that before item 7. So we take up, under my motion, Resolution 191021 first, and then 191020. And I make that motion.
I have a second. Second by Commissioner Fitzgerald.
7.
All right, you said to move both those items up to item 7.
Yes, sir, with V1E coming before K1C.
All right, easy discussion. Seeing none, all in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Any further items for consideration? Is there a motion to approve the agenda as amended? Motion made by Commissioner Eden, seconded by Commissioner Harris. All in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And the agenda is approved. All right, we'll go ahead and move into our public comment portion of this evening. Each individual shall be given 3 minutes to address the Board of Commissioners regarding items that appear on the agenda. The comments shall be limited to items on this meeting's agenda this month. You will have 3 minutes. When you come forward to the podium, if you'll give your name and address to the clerk, I'll start your 3 minutes. The first person is on the agenda for our public hearing is Bill Garland. Bill, if you'll come forward to the podium.
My name is Bill Garland. I live at 691.5 North Cherokee Street, just across the road from the proposed site for the new school. Prettiest piece of property in Washington County. There needs to be a school built on that property. Hopefully tonight, all of you people will vote to approve the resolutions that have been made. I've read the material that's been made available publicly. It's a workable plan. The funding is as established as it can be right now. The repayment plan is as established as it can be right now. Those final tweaks will have to be made after your vote, but I am here asking that everybody votes yes to approve this school funding and building project as soon as we can here tonight. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Bill. All right, our next speaker is Matt Townsend. Matt, if you'll come to the podium, please.
My name is Matt Townsend. I live at 1411 West College Street in Jonesboro, which I have a brief statement regarding this school. As a parent, a coach, school volunteer, and someone who has seen the positive effects on our youth when they have a quality facility to learn and participate in athletics, I fully support and look forward to the possibility of a new school becoming part of our community. And we'd like to see that get done tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. All right, our next speaker is Megan Toole. Megan, if you'll come forward, please.
My name is Megan Toole. I live at 405 West Locust Street in Johnson City. I'm here today to speak on behalf of myself and other community members in favor of the preservation of the Ash Street Courthouse. The building in question served an important purpose in Johnson City's history and can serve an equally important role in our town's future. It will take effort, initiative, and investment to rehabilitate the old courthouse. An initial roof repair of $250,000 has been designated to maintain the integrity of the building, and I realize that this amount seems drastic to some, especially for a property that may or may not revert back to federal control or be auctioned to a private party. But without a clear understanding of the building's future or knowledge of these complicated processes, the building will likely sit for several years as its fate is decided. Without repairs, the condition of that courthouse is guaranteed to deteriorate, threatening the likelihood of the building's survival even after it changes hands. The longer that a historic building sits without the necessary repairs, the more the associated costs increase, as does the likelihood that that building will not be salvageable. If the historic courthouse is not repaired, we condemn it to demolition, and that would be a grave, unfortunate, and irreversible mistake on our part. I realize that large-scale preservation projects are intimidating, but only if you fail to see the value that this historic property has for all of Johnson City's residents and visitors. I will not explore at this time the potential reuse of that courthouse, but what I can confidently say today is that it is in the best interest of our city and county to preserve this building. Historic preservation has the potential to add more than just character to a community. It can generate revenue, create community engagement, improve the quality of life for residents, and foster heritage tourism. The former courthouse possesses great historical, financial, and cultural value. The decision to preserve and reuse this historic building would be advantageous for our city. Many may ask, where will the money for this project come from? And fortunately, our local government has wisely allocated funds for this project, and I hope that they remain confident in the rightness of that decision. There are other financial resources available to us, including the National Park Service, the National Trust for Historic Places, historic tax credits, and state agencies. We have financial resources at our disposal, and it would be short-sighted not to take advantage of these and other programs now. Downtown revitalization efforts fail when cities adopt tear-down development strategies, and in the case of Johnson City, such an approach would undermine all the effort and expense that its citizens and officials have already invested. If it's true that the West Walnut Street corridor is a major focal point of downtown revitalization, this property must be a priority in that plan. We cannot sacrifice the historic courthouse because we do not have the courage, foresight, and vision to save it now. Please prioritize this new roof for your Please prioritize the new roof for this facility and maintain the budget for its ongoing protection and preservation. Thank you.
Thank you, Megan. Our next speaker is James Reeves. James, if you'll come forward to the podium, please.
James Reeves, 125 Cindy Ann Drive, Gray, Tennessee. Three plausible things that can happen. Deal is made with the city and the lease is approved. This is probably the most preferential. No lease deal is made. That would suck, you know, and I'll get into that why. Lease is signed and no deal with the city is made. The county is sued by John City Schools, or John City citizens. When rent becomes paid, that is not cash deal like Boones Creek School is. Those of us that have been around since 2014, 2015, since this was all discussed, we did this work at Boones Creek School with cash. As soon as you pay rent, it's technically not cash anymore, guys. The Min County thing does not come in effect. It is that simple. The mayor's selective memory, he represents and collects taxes from the county as a whole, which does include Johnson City. If the third thing happens, the county's going to be sued, and you're going to have to probably raise taxes. It's that simple. You'll be forced to do it. You may not even be here because it probably won't happen for 2 or 3 years. Some of you guys won't be here. Over the HAFTA Commission is new since 2015. And only one actually remains from 2008. In 2008, funds were shared. 2 new schools were built, high schools were renovated. Johnson City used that money to move the football field, to build Fairmont. They have to use that money for schools. And that money just isn't shared money. We call it shared money. It's money taken from the Johnson City taxpayers through their Washington County taxes. I mean, this is why the laws are in place. In 2015, there was an estimate to renovate both the round schools, $10 million each, the Boones Creek Round School and the Jonesboro Round School. I suggested more than once that's what you should do in fairness to the 2 schools. But the current mayor and his cronies needed Boones Creek School where it is to spur economic development. And anybody that's been out there has seen it happen. They were right. They assumed they could renovate the Jonesboro School. Political rookies. You poke the bear. Well, you poke the tigers, is what you did. Tough decision, guys, but I'm going to tell you right now, I've talked to enough lawyers, and I've had to explain most of this to them, and they've read the McKean County case. That's cash. When you start this rent, that's operation of the school, guys. Please don't look at it any other way, except that we need to deal with Johnson City. I mean, where else are we going to get 30 years at 3%? That's all I got to say. Thanks, Greg.
Thank you, James. All right, our next speaker is Sonia Greer. Sonia, if you'll come forward to the podium, please.
Sonia Greer, 194 Royal Oaks Drive in Jonesboro, Tennessee. We want to say thank you for all of the hours that you've put into making the Jonesboro School Plan a reality. We've been here numerous times before, all of you. Everyone here knows the great need for Jonesboro schools. The town of Jonesboro unanimously passed the plan that's before you. The Washington County School Board unanimously passed the plan that's before you. Our closing statement as taxpayers, parents, and teachers is that we are asking you to stand in solidarity and vote yes for our Jonesboro School Plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Sonia. Mayor Vest. Mayor, I'm not going to try to hold you to the 3-minute rule. So we're going to have you up here at the podium tonight, so you can go ahead and open us up.
I wanted to take the opportunity to use hopefully less than 3 minutes here just to let you know what our board, Mayor and Alderman there in Jonesboro did. At about 4:25 there in Jonesboro, we unanimously approved a lease that you guys had received on October 17th that I think was presented to you as a good lease. They only had one little issue, and that lease remains, and we've made a few amendments to it, most of them favorable to the county. We've also made an amendment that put us responsible for not just the Jonesboro facility and the maintenance and care of that facility, but also the Boones Creek facility, and doing the same things out there that we would do for the Jonesboro facility. Those things cost money. Half of that facility lease would undoubtedly go towards labor. But this is something we think is important for our community, not just Jonesboro. It's really for our county. As I said at our meeting down there, Jonesboro goes about 2 miles that way and 2 miles that way, and about all our facilities are used by county people. And some of those funds that will be from that facility side will go to improve other parks that these kids will be using as well. One being Persimmon Ridge Park, that's been there since the 70s, that I set foot on yesterday, and the bare spots are still there. So believe me, the work we want to do on that facility side will be well worth it. I'm mostly excited about the interlocal agreements, where it's going to be where we work with the school board, we work with the county. This union, I think, is important for us. I think it can be a new day for Washington County, our school board, and our town. And I really also think it's a new day for Johnson City. As I've said, I'm supportive of Johnson City students just like I am Jonesboro. I spend probably more of my time each day in Johnson City than I do in Jonesboro. So that's important, and the plan I think we have set forth will allow you guys to do all of that. The new day for Johnson City, I think, is to learn that this commission can be trusted, that this commission can vote and do things for Johnson City. And I think what you'll see after this vote for Jonesboro, I think you guys will take up Johnson City and do them right at whatever level that you think. And that will be a new day for county and Johnson City relations. So I'm excited about that. So that new day begins now. You're going to get a lease that, in my opinion, you guys are able to set the terms for it. At 25 years, you can do a lot of stuff with it. You can take care of these kids here in Jonesboro, but you can also take some needs that others have out in the county, Sulphur Springs and places, and you can also take care of some needs up in Johnson City. So this lease is good for all parties. It's good for taxpayers. It will not take a tax increase. It's legal, as you've heard many times. It's the issuance of bonds, not cash. In December of 2018, our Johnson City Press did an editorial about what was going on here in Jonesboro, and I was embarrassed because I love Jonesboro. I love Washington County. And any time I feel like it's attacked, it hurts. But they said this relationship down here was a circus. Well, I think that circus ends tonight. I think it's a new day. It's time to make October 28th a day of celebration for our community. I ask you, please approve the October 17th lease we approved and the amendments we added to it. If my passion to get this through offended anyone, I apologize. This interlocal agreement and working together after approved, I tell you, it's a new day, and we're all going to enjoy this relationship. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Don't get too comfortable back there. We'll probably have to have you back here soon. All right, that'll conclude our public hearing, public comment portion, and we will move back into regular session. Item 7 is the Planning and Zoning Commission minutes. They're included on pages 6 and 8. Oh, I'm sorry. I had the wrong portion there, Commissioner. All right. And you had moved 191021 as A, correct? Okay.
But this is a resolution for your consideration, Resolution 191021, a resolution authorizing investigation, negotiation, and execution with the City of Johnson City regarding LEA apportionment. I'm aware that a member of the committee needs to speak to this. There's a little bit of language that was not discussed at the Budget Committee meeting, but he'll do that as an amendment, and I would move this from the committee as a motion.
Motion made to approve the resolution by Commissioner Wheeler, seconded by Commissioner Fitzgerald. Commissioner Tester?
Mr. Chairman, my employer is providing professional design services for some of the upcoming Johnson City schoolwork, so I'm going to abstain from the vote on Resolution 21 and recuse myself from the discussion.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Harris?
On this is looking at the back page where it says investigate, negotiate, and execute. What's the definition that we're approving and execute? Does that mean that the mayor could enter into an agreement without our consent? What's the...
I think Commissioner Malone had initially made that motion in the budget
I'm sorry,
committee.
okay.
So maybe we can ask him to explain that to us, what his thoughts were in making that motion. Will that be fine, Commissioner?
Yes, sir, yes.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Good question, and actually, I went to satisfy myself, I went back today and actually listened to the recording from the Budget Committee meetings. And my motion and what was subsequently approved was to authorize the mayor to enter into discussion, conversation, and negotiation. And so, I don't see it as an amendment, I simply see it as a correction. The word execute should not be there. And it bothers me somewhat how it may have gotten there, but I had expected when we got to our tables today a corrected resolution to be at our places. That's what I had been led to believe. They knew that there may be other amendments to this motion, so I think they decided to accomplish it all at once. From my perspective, that's not an amendment, because that's not what my motion was, that's not what was approved by Budget Committee, and I think the correction is simply the removal of the word execute.
Let me refer to the attorney just a moment. Allison, is that just, do we need a motion? Would that be an amendment, or just how would you like to see us go forward? Just to remove the word execute.
I think that in the title and execution and in the action section 1 and execute would accurately reflect the motion in the Budget Committee and the action that was voted on in Budget Committee. And therefore, since this resolution is intended to be the voice of the commission as brought forward through the committees, I don't think that that is amending the action that's in front of the commission. I think that it's just correcting this resolution to accurately reflect the will of that committee.
Okay. So we don't think we'd need a motion to amend it?
That's correct.
Would you just show that as a correction?
That's correct.
Okay. Commissioner Wheeler?
Mr. Chairman, I would accept that. That was my recollection, too. I don't think that means much of anything. It would have had to come back to us with no amount in there anyway. And it certainly, I want to voice my strong support for this motion. And I don't think this correction really means much of anything, except that we just didn't know how that language got in there. So I accept the correction.
Well, and to that
Commissioner
point,
Moore?
if I may, I do think it means something in the sense, and I hate to contradict my colleague, but I do think it means something in the sense that it's a good faith statement to the citizens of Johnson City that the county is aware of the needs and we intend to address and assist. My point, I'm definitely in favor of the motion as corrected. My point was that's not what come out of Budget Committee, and it simply needed to be corrected. I'm in favor of the motion, and I think it is, it's a good faith statement toward the citizens of Johnson City, of what we're trying to do here. But the addition of the word execute, I think, took it beyond what had been approved in Budget Committee.
I apologize. I didn't mean to say anything against what you were saying. I simply meant that it doesn't change our good intentions toward Johnson City. That's all I meant by that. But I appreciate the statement.
Hang on 1 minute. Commissioner Harris, does that kind of clear your question up of where we are, or
I agree.
how it got to that word?
I like the resolution, so you're saying that clear here saying that execute is not going to be in what we approve, because that's not what comes from the budget.
That's correct.
Okay, so, yes, I'm fine with that.
Commissioner Jones, I'm sorry, I had to go back and clear Commissioner Harris's question up there before we moved on.
I appreciate the discussion about how we language this or how we word this resolution. And I think we need to go one step further in the way that the resolution is worded. If you notice, there are a few whereases that read in a somewhat negative way. I would like to propose that we completely take those three out and we revise the language. So I actually made copies of what I'm suggesting, and I'll read it out loud for those who can't see this. But I wanted you guys to see what I had in mind. Sorry, there's an extra page there. So instead of those three, there's one that says, whereas the Jonesboro proposal provoked concerns, whereas in order to resolve conflict, and another one that says, whereas in resolution of a potential dispute. And I'm suggesting we take those out and change them to, whereas Washington County is committed to apportionment as it represents an opportunity to improve schools across the county. Whereas elected leaders of Washington County seek to lead the development of a stronger relationship with those in the city, recognizing that it is we who set the tone for the spirit of collaborative relationships across the county. And whereas the Jonesboro project represents an opportunity for the county, town, and city to develop a coordinated agenda, a sense of trust, a commitment to one another, and a stronger sense of community. The other notes on that page relate to the word execution, which have been already handled. And I feel like, as a body, we have an opportunity to communicate in a much stronger way than the resolution is currently worded, our commitment and our desire to see relationships go forward in a positive and coordinated way. And if we word it this way instead of the way it's currently worded, it speaks in that way much stronger.
I'd like to second that motion.
All right, so we have a second to the amendment. The Commissioner Jones has offered, which you have in front of you.
Why am I absent? I'm here.
We have a discussion. Commissioner Carriger?
Did you need a second on that?
We have a second. Commissioner Wheeler seconded the amendment that she has offered. So we have a motion and a second. We're the floor open for discussion. I think someone is out of order in the audience. I don't know who it is yet. But we have a motion and a second for the amendment that Commissioner Jones has offered. Is there any discussion before we vote on the amendment?
Call for question.
Thank you, Commissioner. All in favor of the amendment, go ahead and,
I know, I think they're working on it. Are they working on this project? Status? Oh, I'm here.
are we good to go now, or are we good? We can always have a voice vote on the amendment, since it is not exactly legislation. So let's go ahead and take a voice vote on the amendment, and maybe that'll give them a few minutes to get us up and running. All those in favor of the amendment offered by Commissioner Jones, signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? And the motion passes, and the resolution is amended. So we're back to Resolution 1021.
For sake of good order, can we confirm, since we're working with handwritten notes, whose motion it was and whose second, so that Teresa accurately reflects that?
That was Commissioner Jones made the motion.
Seconded by,
Commissioner Wheeler seconded the motion.
thank you very much.
All right, we are back to the resolution as amended, and it's 19-1021. We have a motion and second. Is there any discussion or questions?
Call question.
Question's been called. Madam Clerk, if you'll switch us to the voting screen, please. Go ahead and cast your vote and lock it in. Madam Clerk, if you announce the vote, 14 yes, 1 absent, resolution passes. All right, on to the next item. Commissioner Wheeler, you have messed up my agenda bad. On to the next item, that is Resolution 19-1020. That is under Commissioner Eden's report. Commissioner Edens?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I too have a handout I'd like to pass out. Send those that way. These are just reminders of the attachments that were given to us from the town of Jonesboro. They were emailed to us and mailed to us. I just made paper copies for pressure for everyone.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. Okay, Mr. Chairman, as you said, Resolution 19-1020 is a resolution of support of the Town of Jonesboro's proposed terms for a lease, purchase arrangement, and execution of an interlocal agreement and related leases. I would like to move to approve Resolution 19-1020 that I just read, but with also the 4 documents that I just handed out attached to include to be published as a negotiated terms of Jonesboro's proposal as of October 17, 19, on the county website, as well as with these amendments, which were reflected in the documents sent by the town to the commissioners by mail and email on Friday as final documents to be approved. I bring that to the commission in the form of a motion, sir.
Motion made by Commissioner Eden, seconded by Commissioner Harris to approve the resolution. With that being said, Commissioner Carriger?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This, last week when the dollar amount and the terms were disclosed to us, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I may be out of order, but we have a motion and a second. We do not need to vote for we have discussion.
Thank you.
No, we need to have discussion at this point. I think I'm going to take a few questions, and then we're going to go to our attorney and hear from our attorney and some of our legal counsel and this evening on the lease. But I wanted to go ahead and get a few questions started so they will kind of be ahead of the game on that a little bit. Commissioner Carriger, I've still, unless you have a point of order, Commissioner Tester.
I do,
Yes.
I guess my question is, the attachment for Resolution 19-1020 that was published, from what I understand, Commissioner Edens to say is different than what his motion is. Is that correct, sir?
What's that?
Your motion is to use the 1017 version of the documents with these amendments, right?
My motion is to attach
put these attachments with the resolution.
My point of order and question is, does that not need to be an amendment to what is on our agenda?
Can you attach it and it not be an amendment? Ms. Wilkinson, I want you to weigh in on that a little bit. If it's not a, I guess we would need to have an amendment. It would be separate than the resolution originally presented. It would change the terms of the resolution. So yes, I feel like that we would need to probably go back and reconsider that as an amendment. You feel that's?
I do. I think what's in front of the commission, of course, is more broadly the proposed terms for a lease purchase arrangement generally, and the notice that was provided on the county website and provided to each of the commissioners is more broad than the 80-some pages of detailed terms. So if what Commissioner Edens is putting forward is a motion to actually approve a contract, then I think it would be a motion to amend those terms that were attached in the appendix, if that is his intention. But if what you're doing is opening it for discussion to orient the commission with respect to the terms generally, I don't think that you're amending anything if you're doing that, just to discuss the terms generally.
I think Commissioner Edens had spoke of the lease resolution that's in our current packet today. Is that correct, Commissioner?
Yes, sir.
And then he wanted to change those to the terms 1 through 10 that was laid out in this form, addressed as amendments that we saw the other day. So if you are changing those terms,
that would be a motion to amend the terms of the lease. That's right.
Okay.
I just feel like the attachment offers some resolution to some of the broader things that you're talking about that's in the resolution, and we have Mayor Vest here with us tonight that can speak to those and maybe bring us more clarity.
So I guess we understand at this point, your motion is to get the resolution on the floor, correct?
Yes, sir.
And the second, who seconded that motion? I already looked at the screen. Commissioner Harris. And then we would, once we get it on the floor, the motion and second, we'd probably need to come back and offer this as an amendment to that resolution, is what our attorney said.
Sounds wonderful to me, just to bring it into discussion, get it on the floor, and we can bring the attachments into discussion. And like I said, Mayor Vest is here, who can probably bring a lot of clarity to the attachments or the questions that we may have towards them.
All right. Commissioner Ford.
To ask you, Commissioner Eaton, to kind of generalize this for me, I ain't think we'll let Goddard do this. I can't make head or tail this. I'm just a simple-minded.
Well, I don't know how much clarity, I don't know how much clarity I can give you, Commissioner Ford, but like I said, Mayor Vest is here, and we have a room full of
Who
attorneys.
we need to, is that who we need to talk to?
Well, why don't we hear from our county attorneys, Mr. Smith from Baker Donaldson, that prepared this initial lease that we have on the floor. And then if we have any questions as we move into the amendment, we can go back to Mayor Vest or whoever. Rick Delaney's here, I think, today with our bond counsel, Jonesboro's bond counsel as well. So, Culver, can you offer us any insight before we start really wading deep into this discussion of where we're headed? I know bring us up to speed to about 4 o'clock today. That'd be great. If you just get us right there.
Well, obviously what the chairman, excuse me, I'm Culver Schmidt. I'm with Baker Donaldson.
I've been here before, and I'm glad to be back, and hopefully, if I keep coming back, I think I might have to declare a residency and help pay for this school. But glad to do that.
Yeah, welcome.
And I'm sure you will. So let me try to address that. As the chairman referenced, the town council, is that right? Jonesboro Council met at 4 o'clock and approved these revisions. What has transpired, if you remember, I was here last on October 17th, where we had a draft that had been negotiated at that time, and I think I told you there was one big issue left, and that was really the cost. That's still the case. We still are a little variance on cost. But since that time, on the 21st of October, this past Monday, working with the county officials, you received the county's draft of the lease as a result of that meeting on the 17th, where we attempted to incorporate some of the suggestions that several of you had made to improve the lease. We did that. The town and its attorneys sent out on this past Friday, the 25th, a revised lease that contains the changes in this summary, I believe, that you have. And as I say, of the proposed changes by the town rather, that came out on Friday, approximately 8 of them, 6 of them were fine, and I'm going to go through that and point that out. There are still 2 issues of difference, and I say difference because both the county and the town are ready to build this school for approximately $32 million plus the cost of financing. So everybody is for building the school. It's just, this is what lawyers do. We come in and put it down on paper, so it's exactly what's going to happen. So that's where we are. I don't want people to think there's a group for the school and for a group against it. That's not at all. We're just trying to get the arrangement down in writing. So the difference on, there are two differences that still exist as I see it. One comes from a comment from the commission about wanting to cap the design cost phase. Remember the way this will work, there's going to be a period where the construction drawings are developed and the design work is done before obviously building the project. And there was a comment that we incorporated into our draft on the 21st that capped those fees at $1,500,000. It said that the design costs cannot exceed that, and if they do, that would be an obligation of the town. The reason for that, the reason for the number one, was that the county, looking at its past records, its experience, and came up with a number they thought was reasonable, which was $1.5 million to do design work. Secondly, the way the lease is structured at the request of the town, they were in charge of the design period work. And so that's why we suggested doing it that way. The town obviously, and as you can tell is not in their changes, did not accept that. So that's one issue you're going to need to decide tonight, whether you want to include that cap on design fees as we propose. The second issue, and really bigger issue, is the total cost of the project. The number that has been used before in these meetings is $32 million. What the difference we have with the town at this point is that the town says, and that if they will, I'm sure, correct me if I'm wrong, the town says that it's $32 million plus the cost of the interest that will accrue during the construction loan period, which, in asking the county finance director today, he ballparked that number at about $1 million. Now that depends on how much you end up spending and how long it takes, but that's probably a roughly representative number to use. So the question is the county's obligation $32 million, or is it $32 million plus another $1 million? Now keep in mind, we've got bonds that will be issued. You're aware of that. That'll be the permanent financing piece of this. The interest rate on those bonds and the interest expense on those bonds will be in addition to these costs, and that, everybody understands that. So it's not like it's only going to cost $32 million. It's $32 million is what you're financing plus the financing costs on the bonds. And if it's 32 million plus a million, then it'll be the financing costs on 33 million, okay? So those are the differences at this point. It's your job to determine which one you want to go with. We just need to get something in the document, in writing, that everybody agrees on. The best analogy I came up with in trying to think how can I explain this very complicated matter is it's like a checking account. The county is going to set up a checking account, and based on what we proposed in our October 21 lease, they're going to put $32 million in that checking account. And out of that checking account, you're going to pay the town and the design committee, and ultimately the county will pay rent to cover it. We'll pay for the cost of the acquisition of the property at some point, the cost for the design work, the cost for to cover the town's expenses that they're going to incur managing this, the cost of securing the construction financing, and then the cost of the construction of the project. And then last, you'll have the cost related to the bond financing. So you've got a checking account of $32 million that the county is going to put in there, and that's what is going to be drawn to pay for it. The concept is to try to establish a stop limit on how much the county is going to be obligated for. And the problem we're all having right now is that we really don't know exactly what that is. You don't have any design plans. You don't know what the construction costs are going to be. But that's based on what the county officials have looked at their financial numbers, what can they afford. This is what they're proposing. So that's kind of the question you have tonight before you. So, as I said, the way I counted it, 6 of the 8 proposals from the town are fine. And let me go through their list that they gave you here and try to highlight that and then point out the 2 things that are missing that are important. So is everybody with me? This is the sheet that Commissioner Edens handed out. On the interlocal agreement, those 2 changes, those are fine. We've looked at them and are agreeable to that. Now to the building lease. In section 3, you'll notice at the end of that paragraph that's listed there, it says the parties intend that the interest on the interim financing, which is another word for the construction loan, is not to be capitalized but will be paid as part of the initial rent. The county's preference is to remove the words "is not to be capitalized" because that suggests what I was talking about earlier, that would be in addition to the $32 million. And in a minute, I'm going to have a provision to add that helps underscore that. In the number 4 there, that paragraph is acceptable, except it left out the design cost limit of $1,500,000 that we previously had inserted. Again, that's going to be your call whether you want to put that back in. Number 5, section 1.8, that says how much the bonds, the maximum amount of the bonds could be. $32 million, we're fine with that. Section 1.9, that relates to another question or another suggestion that came up from the commission last time about who gets the work product. We're fine with that. Over to section number 7, section 4.1. Again, that is fine with us. It correctly states what we're talking about doing. Now, here's the key part that is missing. We had a section 4.10, and that was a section that we used to cap, to say that the total rent paid, keep in mind, the county's paying rent, and that's used to pay the financings and what have you. But the total rent paid, and it's broken down between initial rent, which is during the construction phase, and base rent, which is during the bond phase. we said the total rent cannot exceed $32 million. Within the total rent are all the things I've listed, all the costs of the project. So by having that section in there, we were putting a limit on the county's liability at $32 million. If we didn't do that, it's possible, one scenario could be, you could take the project out to bid and come back, and it's going to come back at a higher amount than $32 million. Now, there is a stop provision in the planning phase where either the town or the county can look at the plan and say, wait a minute, we don't want to do that. But this, my recommendation is the county, if they want to make sure there is a limit on that, your financial exposure, you need this provision. And Mr. Chairman, could I hand out this section that we lack?
Absolutely.
This is what would be section 410, and it rated the Senate caps all those costs of those committees. Now, what the town very clearly earlier today when I attended the meeting, they don't agree with this because it says that their cost of construction financing will not be in excess of this $32 million amount with equity. And this provision will include within the $32 million that cost of construction financing. So this provision, the county has proposed in this October 21st draft, it was sent out to you on Monday. But the town obviously did not want to include that in its draft. So, as I was saying, most of these the county is just fine with. Section 410 is left out, and that's what we would suggest you put back in. One point, and I don't want to confuse things, the original 410 we had in our October 21 draft was worded a little bit differently from that. The same result occurred, but I tried to explain what might happen if we had some excess rent paid, rather than try to get into that now when we really don't know what the facts are. This statement you have is more succinct and to the point and makes clear the county's financial obligation is $32 million all in. Again, that's your call. As the county's lawyer, the only thing I ask is make a decision on it so we can put it in the document and quit going back and forth sending drafts where I say 32 and they say 32 plus, or whatever number you want. Yes, sir.
Talking about 410, you also had added 411 on the 1021 draft.
Right, I was getting to that.
Okay, sorry, I was going to ask you if you didn't say it.
Well, 411 was a provision that we also added that says, essentially states that the cost would need to be documented, evidenced by written invoices or what have you. Again, the town struck that out. I would prefer to have that in there. I had it in there in the original draft on the 21st. Does it have to be in there? I'm not going to fight over that tonight. If the town is adamant that they don't want to have that, I think it's not unreasonable to leave it out if that's a big issue. Again, your call. My original suggestion was put it in, but I'm trying to get us, we're on the same page. 12.3, number 8 on your list, 12.3 was made at the suggestion of the lending authority, and we're fine with that. We certainly want to do everything the lender is recommending. I'm not worried about the county losing its ability to purchase, because that would certainly, in my reading of 12.3 as it's revised, would allow us to purchase the project regardless. So those are all the changes in the building lease that have been proposed by the town or inserted back by the county. And there's really just two that we have a difference on. In the facilities lease, it's it's also listed here. Number 9 on your list. The design costs, again, the limit that was previously in that section has been taken out. Obviously, it's just the same as in the building lease. But if you decide you want to have a limit on design costs, it needs to go back in that provision that's referenced there, section 1.3. Another provision that I heard this afternoon, I don't think they've had a chance to put on this list, is a limitation on the term of the facilities lease. And as I understand it, as was approved by the town, and certainly those that were there approving it can speak to it, the town was let me back up. The way the facilities lease reads right now, and remember that's the lease of the recreation facilities that are adjacent to the school. The way that lease reads is that the facilities lease would have the same lease term as the term of the bonds, which could be up to 38 years. What I understand the town has agreed to this afternoon at their 4 o'clock meeting is that they said, number one, if the facilities lease term will not have to match the term of the bonds, and that they are agreeable to a 10-year term. I'd recommend we put that in the lease document if that's what the agreement is. And again, your call, but let's put it in writing and stick to it. So let's see, the last one, number 10, that we're fine with that. As it mentions here, the purchase option, there were no changes, so we're fine with that. So I think what is before you tonight are really these 2 questions where we have, I won't say they're minor differences, but they are minor differences. It's just a matter of cost. If you are concerned about the cost of the design phase, then put a limit in that provision. Restore what we had originally put in there. We'd recommend $1.5 million. If you are concerned about the total exposure that the county has financially, then put a cap in, restore this section 4.10 that I've handed out to you that says the total all-in cost for the county is $32 million. Or put in whatever it is you're going to agree to. If you agree with the town, then let's make it real clear what is the ultimate liability of the county from a financial standpoint. I highly recommend you put that in the lease now, whatever it might be, so that it is crystal clear how much the county is going to need to budget to develop this project. That's my reading of what you got, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Culver. Commissioner Carriger, I noticed your light has been on there for several minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. When we came upon a fixed number last week of $32 million, I called a couple of bankers I knew to ask them what could the city of Johnson City borrow $32 million at with the current bond rating. And they told me on a 20-year, 2.5 to 2.65%. They told me on a 25-year, you're looking at a 2.75. And that got me to thinking that, is there a way to save the taxpayers some money? We're all taxpayers here. And I started a conversation with Mr. Peterson at the City of Johnson City. And I think I've found a way we can save the taxpayers over $12 million. And I'll lay it out for you. We strike a deal with Johnson City and let them borrow the money, and we'll build the school. The $500,000 a year for 10 years goes away. That's right at $10 million right there. You've got about $850,000 is what we spent to redo the Christian Church Road out at the new Boones Creek School. I figure if that's what it cost for Cherokee, and then you've got about, I'm guessing, $300,000 to do the road between the pharmacy and Powell's going into the school. That's about $1,150,000. And then the interest savings, and I haven't had a chance to calculate, but I'm sure it's going to be more than $1 million. But I think we can save $12.5 million at least by taking a look at, and what Mr. Peterson wrote me back is, he said, "We are proposing that we act as a financial conduit only. We don't need to be involved in location design, construction management, facility usage, unless asked to provide assistance in these areas. In return, we only ask that the savings from this project be reinvested in capital projects that benefit all of Washington County, hopefully limited to educational facilities, and that the city schools receive funding for replacement renovation of Town Acres School." I think this is something, because of the size of the money, we need to take a look at and need to pause and think about. But it's I think, well in excess of $12 million. And I think we have an obligation to see if there's a better deal out there for the taxpayers.
Thank you, Commissioner Carriger. Commissioner Malone?
Thank you. I am intrigued by that concept. And of course, I think many of us, or most of us, all of us, received an email very late today. But I'm intrigued by the concept. And it won't surprise anybody when I say that I like cake, and I like the icing, and I like to eat it. So I like it all. I want the best of both worlds. So I'm intrigued by what Commissioner Carriger has presented, and I'd like to evaluate it. That said, I hate to let an opportunity, the bird in the hand, if you will, pass away. I'm inclined, and this may or may not even be possible, the town of Jonesboro may or may not go along with it. I'm inclined, we are so close, even you said it a moment ago, I think we're very close to having negotiated down to just a few minute details with the town of Jonesboro and their agreement. I'm inclined that we try to finalize those couple items tonight and approve these documents with the town of Jonesboro so that we have a bird in hand. But let it be subject to a 30 or 45-day evaluation period of a potential, perhaps similar relationship with the city. Again, I don't know that the town would be agreeable to that, and I know time is of the essence to them. But if we did that, we have an agreement, we have negotiated a proposal with the town of Jonesboro, but we've at least bought ourselves some time to evaluate an opportunity with the city of Johnson City. I want the town of Jonesboro and its leadership to know I am grateful for having brought us to this point. But if there is an opportunity to save, $12 million, I don't want to turn a blind eye to that either. But I'd hate to walk away tonight and not approve what we are so close to accomplishing, but approve it with the understanding that we're at least going to evaluate this opportunity with the city of Johnson City. That may be the best of both worlds, and we may not be able to get there, but that's what I think I'd like to see happen.
Commissioner Harris?
So, I understand, if we're borrowing $32 million if we approve this project at 3% interest. That's what we're basing that on over a period of, could be 38 years, hopefully be shorter. I guess we're looking at what we can do without raising taxes. But, and I appreciate Commissioner Carriger being interested in saving. I'm sure for saving as well, but you said that was 2.75 they could borrow the money for, Johnson City?
I called two bankers just to see what the rates were, and I was told by both of them the 20-year rate was somewhere around 2.5, 2.65, 25-year rate was 2.75. That's based on Johnson City's credit rate.
Yes, I'm for saving, but where do you get $12 million? I mean, we're borrowing 32. How do you save $12 million over 0.5% interest?
You pay the town of Jonesboro $500,000 a year for 10 years, 20 years, whatever.
To operate the facility. You're talking about to operate the proposal they've made in the facilities.
Right.
So, okay.
$41,700 a month.
Yes, I just wanted to be clear.
And the other savings is, and I'm just estimating, we're going to have to do some repairs to Cherokee Road. And we spent out on Christian Church for the new Boones Creek School, I think $850,000 for the road out there.
and then we're going to have to put a road in between the pharmacy and Powell's, and I estimated that at $100 a square foot. I don't know if we're going to need curbs, sidewalks.
Yes.
It could be more if they want sidewalks and all that good stuff.
But somebody's going to have to, if we build this and we build it with the plans we got, somebody's going to have to operate these facilities. Somebody's going to have to mow the field. I mean, so I don't see where you're coming up with $12 million in savings.
Well,
It's going to have to be done by somebody. And looking at what Jonesboro proposed, I think it was, I know it's a lot of money, that you look at hiring people, I mean, it's not cheap.
Well,
so I don't know.
I think, you know, Johnson City's got a big park and rec program. They could probably, in fact, I think they, if my memory is right, on the Boones Creek School, when early on before I became a commissioner, there was some discussion of Johnson City doing the maintenance on all the athletic fields out there, and I'm thinking it was $150,000 a year, something like that.
Yeah, they flat turned us down on that.
Okay.
They're not interested in going with us on that, so that was.
I don't think it's fair to say $12 million when we don't have a price from Johnson City or whoever else saying what they could operate these for. I mean, I appreciate the savings. If we can save interest,
Well,
that'd be great.
I'm trying to save the taxpayers some money.
I think it's throwing out a big number that's not fair to Jonesboro.
Well, are we going to pay the $500,000 a year to Jonesboro or not?
We'll vote on it, I guess.
I guess we will.
All right, let's keep talking about voting. We may get started on that here in just a minute. But I appreciate the discussion. We may go back to some of our experts. Commissioner Wheeler, did you? We're moving fast.
I know y'all are tired of hearing this, so I'll give sort of the abbreviated version. But after consultation with the county attorney, I want to make this disclosure that I don't have any direct or indirect financial interest in this agreement. However, I do represent the town of Jonesboro, and therefore, while my concern in this is for the residents of Washington County and the students involved in this school and the schools dealt with in the other resolution, that I am going to abstain from voting tonight, and I will not participate as a commissioner in the discussion. Any participation will simply be as a representative of Jonesboro.
Thank you, Commissioner. I think Mr. Smith has done an excellent job in bringing us up in the contract portion of this discussion of where some of the catch. Commissioner Edens?
I would just like to say I also appreciate Mr. Carey's comments. Saving money is always a wonderful thing. I also agree with Commissioner Harris's comments.
And I remember that meeting that Mr. Davenport's talking about with the city. They wanted no part of helping us with Boones Creek or with fields or anything else. We don't know what that savings will be until we know how we're going to take care and maintain the facilities, the ball fields, and what the cost will be. I also want to say that I too do not want Johnson City left out in this or forgotten about by any means. I think our school system needs to be looked at. I know we have a city and a county facility, but I feel like we have children that need to be taken care of, need to receive the finest education they can get in Washington County. Citizens of the city, citizens of the county, we need not neglect not one child in Washington County of an education. I want to see Johnson City's needs met in schools and everywhere else, but we're talking about education in schools right now. I want to see their needs met as much as I want to see county needs met, not one over the other. We have a dire need in Jonesboro right now. I personally feel like we're lucky we haven't been sued over illness issues alone in this school building we're talking about. I've talked with people from Johnson City. I've talked to Dr. Barnett. I don't begin to understand all the needs in the city or all the needs with Town Acres, but I know they're real, and I know they need to be addressed, and I know we need to be as diligent to address those as we have been with this Jonesboro school. I serve on the Health, Education, and Welfare Committee. I'm hoping to build a better relationship for education, where education is concerned, between county and city through that committee, and hopefully through the commission. So I don't want to slight anybody here, but I do tend to agree with Commissioner Malone. We have opportunity to do something. We have opportunity to do the right thing for the children in Jonesboro right now that are suffering health issues. I mean, it's gotten to the point of health issues. And if you've been through the building, you know what I'm talking about. But I in no means want to leave anybody behind.
Commissioner Carrier?
I hope this will be my final comments, but I think it's incumbent upon us to try to find ways to save the taxpayers' money. The town of Jonesboro's park and rec budget, I think, is about $1.4 million for this fiscal year. $500,000 represents about 38% of that budget. That's to me. I think we can do a better job and get it done cheaper than $500,000. And that's the last I'll say because I think I'm here for the taxpayers.
Thank you, Commissioner. I think, Commissioner England?
Well, I just want to comment on Commissioner Carragher's proposition that saving the taxpayers' money is crucial, and that's a lot of what we're here for. I represent District 7, which includes Town Acres, and I think I've gotten more phone calls and emails on this topic in the last few weeks than I have in the 5 years I've been on this commission. I just wish some of those parents had been here tonight to speak also, because it looks like it's so one-sided. And it's just very hard for me to pick one side against the other, because trust me, those kids in Jonesboro, they do need a new school. I just don't like the way that this has come about that keeps leaving Johnson City, or the city schools out of what they want to call their fair share, because they do pay county taxes as well, and a larger share of it, property taxes. So I just wish we could pause and take a look at what Commissioner Carragher has brought to us for 30 days. I think it would be worth it.
Commissioner Williams?
I think we ought to endorse that we're going to build this Jonesboro school, and that we can approve the financing that has been put before us, but we can change it. If we're buying a house, we may get a loan from one institution, and then some other institution gives us a better deal. Are you going to stick with the one that isn't quite as good? I don't believe so. So I want to be sure that we can look again at what is being presented by the city and not be penalized because we're going to finalize it within 30 days, and if you don't get it done, don't come back.
Thank you, Commissioner Williams. Mayor, did you have anything you wanted to add here for a moment? Come on up, Mayor.
Well, I could say I didn't expect this, but we ended our meeting at about 4:30, and you find an email that went out to the county commissioners, and we read through it pretty quick, and it didn't take long to realize that Mr. Peterson was making some assumptions on the type of loan that the town of Jonesboro would take out that he's not that knowledgeable of. And also, I'm not sure where, in Pete's thing, he says $15 million. Yeah, we can cut the facilities lease out on Jonesboro, but as Commissioner Harris and Eden said, those fields don't get mowed, they don't get taken care of, you don't host tournaments, you don't do those things. Nobody's going to do that for free. There's cost involved. At minimum, half of that's going to go to labor just to maintain those facilities. Our plan is to utilize both the Boones Creek facility, the Jonesboro facility, and Persimmon Ridge Park, which we want to use some funds to make better for county kids and ours, and host tournaments that can bring revenue in for all of us. We can share in those revenues. And that worry that you might have that's ultimately only about $100,000 maybe out of the facility side, before long, after 10 years, it probably goes away. That's why I was more than happy to shorten that at least to 10 years. Because after that, the town of Jonesboro would probably go into a deficit in that. So it's not as big a number as you think. You hire 5 people at $35,000 with family health insurance coverage. That's $50,000 a person. It's at $250,000 pretty dang quick. And our Park and Rec department right now are taking care of 10 parks. They take care of Wetlands Water Park. The budget's a little higher than what he says. we're going to have to hire people to do these facilities. And if there is any excess, it's going to route back to county kids in other parks. Talking about the savings there, yes, you can cut Jonesboro out of the 10 million, that's fine. But that's not cutting Jonesboro out. Those fields are going to get done for free. I had a good conversation with Mayor Brock, and I asked her about, well, how are those fields going to get taken care of? She says, well, how are they getting taken care of today? And I said, where? And she said, up at the facility. I said, there's no athletic facilities at Jonesboro. We do them for free right now. And it's too late in the game, in my opinion, to kind of worry about 2.75 when Pete's interest on 25 years is exactly the same of ours. There's not going to be that savings there. And this was talking about a partnership, developing this with the town of Jonesboro. We have facilities all over downtown dying to partner with the Washington County School Board to do programming in arts and other things. This is bigger than 2.75 versus 3%. It's actually bigger than 3% or 3%. So there's not the savings there unless you want to get those facilities maintained for free, which won't happen. And at the end of that note from Mr. Peterson, it wasn't free. He said it comes with a stipulation of a new facility at Town Acres, which might be fine, but that shouldn't hold up a Jonesboro project. The delay that you're talking about, it's 30 days. There's no way we get this rate that we have right now. It could go up, it could go down. Yes, you're rolling the dice. But we've been rolling the dice for 3 years. It's time for 8 or 9 of you to just say, let's get this thing done. It's not, that right there is not accurate. We got delayed on October 17th. It's time to make something happen, and it's October 28th is a celebration. There's not the savings that they're saying in there. It is a delay. I want to address, Culver did a great job really covering what our amendments was. That was perfect. And there's a disagreement. And it's over $1 million in interest. Maybe $1.5 million is what, we're assuming $1.5 million in construction interest. So basically you got two choices. In this lease, if the bids come back higher than what you guys approve, it comes back to you a second time to whether or not you want to move forward with this project. The county has the right to terminate this lease if this thing comes in higher than $32 million at your fail-safe. Our proposal is $32 million in construction budget. You have the revenue to pay this interest during construction. You have that you can pay as you go. So that leaves a true $32 million in construction dollars to get this facility built. We have a design committee that Joe will be part of, that I will be part of, a commissioner will be part of, school board's part of, and we're going to undoubtedly work to build this facility less than that. And it's going to take cooperation between the county and the Jonesboro, utilizing our own crews. It's the town of Jonesboro, the recreational side. We can get grants and stuff that others can't get, and we're willing to do those things to offset cost. And I want to bring that cost in lower than what we have. The safest thing, in my opinion, is to take the town's proposal. It's a true $32 million construction budget. You pay the interest as you go. With the county's proposal, yes, it's $32 million flat, but you got to subtract off that interest because you can't build anything with it. So you're really looking at 30.5, maybe 31 if it's $1 million. We're projecting, I think it was $1.7 million, and then during that period, you can invest this construction dollars, and it'll knock off about 300 more thousand. So we're saying 1.5 to be conservative. So the county's proposal, their construction budget is really only about $30.5 million. Still a lot of money. We might come in under that, but you know what happens if that bid comes in at $32,100,000? It's going to come back to you guys to put these people through this again. That's just the simplest thing is approve it for $32 million. Pay your interest, let our design committee that we're all part of develop this school for a price that we want. It's not about delaying it to figure out if you can get 2.75 or 3%. The term that we've always felt like was good for the county because it could allow you to take care of Johnson City, it could allow you to take care of Sulphur Springs and some other places. It's 25-year term. And at 25 years, by Pete's numbers and our numbers, 3% is the same. If you decide to go to 30 years, our lease stays at, our interest stays at 3%. If you go, well, you can't go 30 years with Johnson City. If you guys decided you wanted to go to 30 years, you could do more for Johnson City, more for the county schools. So 25 and 30 years is a sweet spot for you. As Freddie said, you got a bird in hand. We went from 20 years down to 10 years. We're lucky for breaking even there. We've made concessions just to get this approved. I think I've always felt like every one of you would vote for this proposal because it's too good for just everybody. It's too good. And it's about cooperation, collaboration, and doing something right for the students of not just Jonesboro, but Washington County. It can make a big impact. So that's my preach, I guess, or wish. It's the time to say yes is now. I hope I don't hear any no's. The time to say yes is now. There's not a better offer out there than this. All due respect to, wishes. Yes, cut Jonesboro out. Cut us out. But, parks still have to get taken care of. You won't have the partnership between the school board. I mean, you are starting over from the ground floor to negotiate with Johnson City, and I think you went through that at Boones Creek, and it didn't end well on things out there. We're this close. All it takes is 8 votes, but I'd rather see everybody support it and feel good about it, and then tomorrow wake up and start talking to, working something out with Johnson City. It's that simple.
Commissioner Tester?
Mayor Vest, since we're talking about numbers, I have a question for you. In your conversations with your design professionals so far, that 32 million number, or 31 and a half, or 30 and a half, whether you were talking about a minute ago, has there been consideration in that for kitchen equipment, furnishings, and contingency? Because those 3 items together can be 3 million or something. And
absolutely. I mean, that's we're 32 all in. That includes design fees, and we start talking about, capping design fees. Joe and I had a good conversation about that. It's set at 1.5. It might not be that big a deal. I think Joe said it'll come in under that. It'll probably be, 1.2 or so. And it wasn't anything to be concerned about. But our issue was just don't add in there, Jonesboro's going to be responsible for it. We're a small town. We can't afford to take on that kind of, even though it's a small risk, it's unnecessary when design fees will probably come in less than that anyway. And in a sense, design fees are capped because if you're capping the project at $32 million, everything within that $32 million is capped at that. And then in spite of that, in this lease, the design fees are capped at 5% of the cost of the project. And so that's where I'm sure Joe's comes up with the 1.2. It's capped at 5%.
So
and kitchen and all that.
Kitchen equipment, furnishings, and contingency.
Yeah, ball field lights,
in
you
there.
name it. Asphalt for the track. It's all going to be part of the project. Yeah.
All right. Commissioner McAllister?
Yeah, and this may be to Mr. Mayor Grandy, excuse me, not Mayor Vest over here. And I just refresh my memory again, design fees and cost on Boones Creek. 'Cause, I mean, that should be our example. What was our design fees on that again? On Boones Creek?
I don't have that on top of my head, but this is a 5% design contract, $32 million, that was the design cost.
At one point, that's why, okay, so we still got that. Okay, I didn't know if you had an exact number on the Boones Creek, and I know I'd ask Mr. Merritt about that.
It's going to be less than that.
Yeah.
It was 4.9% of the total cost.
Okay.
Yeah, and that 5% at $32 million is not quite accurate. That's the 5% won't be on top of legal fees and all the other things in there. So it's probably in the 1.2.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
When I studied the sketches, are you going with a single level or 2 levels?
Well, we, of course, the design committee is going to have a little bit of say, but we're about 95% be multi-level. It's one of the advantages that we think we have on controlling the cost. One, we were really purposeful in picking out a site that we thought would lay perfectly for a school and also wouldn't have some of the excess charges that we as taxpayers incurred in Boones Creek. We'll have probably very, very minimal need for retaining walls. Excavation costs will be slightly less, but you will have multi-level. The plan is now the upper floor will be for the younger kids, K through 4 or pre-K if keeping them want that. And then you'll have a 2-story structure at the lower part of the property. That will be 2 stories. So it's multi-level, single level, some places multi-level in another.
Mayor, we've talked a lot about the facilities and things like that, and the money associated with that. As you know, at Boones Creek School, we basically have 2 ownerships out there. The school owns school grounds, and the county owns the ball field area, and I think down to the road, which includes those retaining walls on Highland Church Road. Is your part, do you plan to take care of that as well, or are you just taking care of the ball fields themselves? What's your plan?
Well, I think our plan will be the athletic facilities. I probably wouldn't want to risk anybody out on those retaining walls trying to move that. I'm not sure how they'll, do that, but, if down the road we saw that was something we could easily do, and I'm a little hesitant to take on more, because I really, even though it's $500,000, believe me, I think we plan on doing a first-class job of maintaining and repairing that, and repairs sometimes come with, hidden costs. I've got to take care of the little town of Jonesboro, and as I said, half of that's gone in labor pretty dang quick, and, you're probably going to have a couple of trucks you might need to buy, some more things, and it's, if that's something that our staff looks at and thinks it's not a big deal, depending on how we approach it, that's something we would consider, because I know that's going to be a bear for the school board to worry about. But right now, we're thinking athletic facilities. But now, in the Jonesboro thing, we are talking about the school grounds, because we want to make sure that the school grounds are really attractive. We like to make sure Jonesboro, landscapes a lot, so our plan with the school, and we've talked to Dr. Flannery about it, we want to landscape that thing as nice as it can be, and I think it'll be an asset.
Mayor Grandy, is the area that I'm talking about, is that school property, is that county property, or do you know?
Looks like most of the retaining wall area is in alignment with the county property. Definitely not how it's structured.
Yeah.
Look, Commissioner McAllister, not to interrupt, but 1.4.
Commissioner Malone?
Just a few thoughts and then a question, but relative to the $32 million and what it includes, I shared with several folks, I think yourself and Mayor Ramsey, that I think you probably, that amount should include the design costs, because we cover the design costs, or the construction interest. But it probably is a step too far for it to include both. And as I understand it, right now, the county wants it to include both, and the county just wants it to include design costs and not the construction interest. So I think that's reasonable. And then I'm going to put you on the spot here. You may want to think about it. You may want to infer that. I know one of the few remaining items to be, I guess, resolved is about the design costs and the cap on those. And the fact that they're going to be covered out of the total $32 million, that gives me some reassurance. But as it stands now, in the county's version, the published version, it says the cost would not exceed $1.5 million in the aggregate without county's written consent. The next sentence is, I think, the one that sounds the most appropriate. Any expenditures related to design costs incurred in excess of such amount shall be paid by the landlord to the town. If we simply struck the latter sentence, because there is an outlet valve, if they cost more than $1.5 million, one, I'm not going to be happy, but two, there is an outlet, it says without county's written consent, which it would come back to us, and there would be some explanation from the design committee as to why they're more than $1.5 million. But there is an outlet there for them to be approved. Will the town accept that limit if we exclude that next sentence, that any overages are covered?
Well, I would wonder what would be the conflict if it is over 1.5, and what's the county going to do at that point? Are you saying, no, we're not going to pay it, and it all falls apart? And it's probably splitting hairs, like you know, 1.4 is what it cost out in Boone. We're estimating 1.2. I think our construction cost is probably gonna be less than what Boones Creek is, so the design fee should be less. But yeah, if that's a solution, I'd have to confer with my town attorney to see if that, what my whole hope is that we don't do anything that allows this to be back here a year from now or a year and a half, and then you have to make a decision on whether to do this project again, and you have parents here again. That's minute. If the town of Jonesboro was Johnson City, I'd say, yeah, we'll pick up the extra $50,000 or $75,000, but that's a lot of money to the town of Jonesboro. That's just all, our hope is that it's going to be below 1.5 anyway. Let's don't, ruin anything because of that.
I guess the county side of that would be, if it's gonna be less than 1.5 anyway, then the cap shouldn't matter.
If our town attorney says that language that you use would be sufficient and doesn't jeopardize the finances of the town of Jonesboro, it would make no difference to me. I'm just, we're expecting to bring it less than that anyway. What's your opinion there, Jim?
First of all, what the cap matters does. Just the cap itself, because the town has said, and my instructions have been from the Board of Mayor and Aldermen, that the town will not accept financial risk in this. However, with what is being proposed, there would just be a delay, I suppose, if we got to the cap and the county had not approved it. We'd have to just stop the design phase until the county made a decision. And we'd probably have to put the same language in if the county elects not to move forward, the same language about the expenses being paid. I'm not real clear on, and we haven't worried about this because we were taking that provision out, but I think we'd also need to define design cost a little further to make sure we knew what we were including. But that would be the concerns with that. But that would not be taking on additional risk if the county was saying, we want to be notified and we don't want it to go over that without, the county coming back to the commission for county approval. That's fine. We would just stop there, and then we'd have the unwind provisions just like we have in all these other sections where there's an opportunity to unwind. If Mr. Schmidt, if feels like that would work.
Well, I think if that moves this forward, if we're comfortable that, and as a town of Jonesboro, and as a taxpayer, I want that to be less than 1.5. So if that moves this forward, I think that would be fine. If we need to talk to our design folks and say you need to come in a little bit cheaper, then we'll make them come in a little bit cheaper, or we'll bring that back to you.
Mayor, if I might add, I think that falls within the authority that they gave you this evening this afternoon to finalize documents. Also, the school board's attorney has indicated the documents as presented by Jonesboro tonight were acceptable to them. This change would not affect them, their interests, so I'm confident that he would be fine with that too. So there would not be any delay, and I know that has been one thing the board made clear this afternoon, that there could not be any delay. Then that could be approved probably tonight or in the morning at the latest. Okay. Mr. Bennett's usually available till about midnight.
Yeah. So we will make that a concession to just cap that at 1.5. Yeah, because it's
Commissioner Ford?
Mayor Vest, originally our annual payment was going to be 2.3. How does this change it? Does that depend on what the term of the bonds are?
Yeah, you
Depending
got
on how much we're going to be paying plus the 400 or the 41.7 a month.
Yeah, yes, sir. It's you guys as a commission will be allowed to vote for 20, 25, 30, or even up to 38, which I don't think is necessarily something everybody's excited about, but to me, a sweet spot, depending on what you want to do with the excess funds on taking care of other needs. I think you can set it at 25 or 30 and probably make everybody happy. But that's going to be up to you. You're approving the lease, and and you all have the option of setting those terms where you'd like them. And that's one advantage of working with, rural development. They do have that flexibility. And the one advantage of going out to 30 years is that you have a provision in there where you could pay it off early. And so that gives you a little flexibility on the front end to do more. And then as you generate, more cash, once some other projects are paid off, you just pay it off early.
That was gonna be my next question. Can you pay that off early?
Yes, sir. This is really,
No penalty.
as Culver said, this is a good lease. We've taken care of the design issue, and I just think we need to make sure we don't, Boones Creek was a costly project, and you're talking about this one being about 4 years, later, I guess, by the time it gets completed, or 3 years, or 2 years, and, we're gonna try to deliver this one about the same thing Boones Creek was, costing now, and, I'm not sure why we wouldn't wanna act.
Well, I guess our delay a little bit, Mayor, is that all the questions aren't answered. And we've got to sit here this evening and work those questions out.
Right.
So I think that's where we're at this evening, and our attorney's here. Mayor Grandy, did you have anything to add while we're working on that portion of the lease? I know you haven't had any time.
Yeah, actually, it's hard to believe that this is only day 71 in this challenging negotiation, but it is. And a month ago, this commission body asked me as the mayor to investigate and negotiate the best terms possible, and that's what's coming to you tonight. Jonesboro was clear that certain terms were poison to doing the deal, and the county has made every effort to keep this proposal alive and avoid those poison pills. With the legal and financial team, the county's team has attempted to quantify and qualify the impact of the terms in a way that provides you, as well as the county citizens and taxpayers, the most transparency. The county's team has negotiated the terms it believes are in the best interest for the county. The town has negotiated the terms that it believes are in the best interest of the town. And so here we are, ready to do the business of county and consider the latest version of 4 extremely complex documents. The project represents a revolutionary approach in more ways than one, and to build a new school without increasing taxes is to the benefit of all of Washington County. So anyone who says this commission or this county staff has sat on their hands or delayed the process is completely mistaken. During these past 71 days, I've probably had more calls and meetings with commissioners and citizens on this proposal than any other matter that's come before the body since I've been a part of it. And the legislative body has demonstrated prudence and patience and a willingness to put the interest of the county citizens and taxpayers above their own. As county mayor, I do not have a vote on this proposal. Only the commissioners can vote yes or no. But here's the thing. I'm the chief financial officer of the county, and Chuck got a phone call. And I'm the guy the taxpayers elected to hold the responsibility of stewarding the tax dollars. I've negotiated this agreement with your input. So as you cast your vote tonight, I believe it will be what you think is right. Regardless of the vote you cast, it's a weighty decision that you will make. And as the Chief Financial Officer and Mayor of Washington County, I ask you to remember that the county shoulders all of the risk for the project. And our mandate as elected officials is to act in the best interest of a diverse county. That includes industrial, urban, historic, agricultural, and other interests. There's a lot to be considered tonight, but I will want to say that at our last meeting, one of the tasks that you all gave to me was to try to let this group know what it would cost to get to the point where we can even figure out what this proposal is gonna cost. And that's where the $1.5 million came from. There's really no magic. We took the $1.6 million architectural fee that'll be assessed to the project, took it to 80%, that's $1.2 million. When asked a few weeks ago, the town of Jonesboro had indicated they had already incurred cost over $100,000, so that was factored in. During the design phase, we are expected to pay for the planning of the design for the project, not limited to, but including architectural fees, number of which I just mentioned, engineers, planners, attorneys, and other professionals that are associated with the project. We don't know what those fees will be. We just know that there'll be some. So we made our best guess. In addition, we'll pay those invoice costs plus 20% for a maximum cap in the first year of $120,000. So $1.2 million, $100 million for Jonesboro, $120 million for the design cost, excess 20% in the first year, gets you to 1.42. So we know, fairly confident that we'll get to that point. So that's what it'll take to determine whether or not this project will come anywhere close to budget or, you know, what has to be done. We've referenced a school size of somewhere between 140 and 150,000 square feet. The original proposal indicated 140, a more recent, I think in the lease it references 147 or some number. But anyway, talking to the architect, somewhere in the neighborhood of 140 to 150,000 square feet. That'll put it close to the size of Boones Creek in overall square footage. What's happened to the construction market since we bid Boones Creek roughly 3 years ago, I think everyone understands there's been some changes. We don't know exactly how that will impact the cost of the project until it goes to the, you know, the construction market, you know, to figure that out. So that's the work that we've kind of been engaged in, not exactly around the clock, but some days almost. And so we offer that tonight. It's not an easy choice necessarily. It's one of the things I think you need to consider is how much you're willing to invest to find out if it works. And we know we've already made some architectural investment in Jonesboro, and probably won't get any return for that. Mr. Malone made a good recommendation that's been accepted generally by everybody, that the money we invest on architectural design will wind up being owned by the county. So truly a school needs to be built, you know, for these Jonesboro students. I don't think anybody around the table wouldn't like to see that happen. The goal of this group is to figure out, you know, what's the best financial model to make that happen. And we've had, well, you know, let's get this out too. We've had conversations, not negotiations, but a lot of talk back and forth with the city of Johnson City. We feel like that there's a way forward to not completely satisfy their needs, but to help them with their projects while putting this project together in Jonesboro. So feel like, given the opportunity, we can put that together in a proposal for y'all that hopefully you would find agreeable, and that we could work with the folks in Johnson City to help them as well. So that's sort of what I had to say.
Thank you, Mayor. I know you both have worked very hard at putting these proposals together, and sometimes it comes down to the very end that we've got to do our work, and we appreciate you all doing that. I know Jonesboro's worked very hard. A lot of people's pitched in and worked hard. This is the first evening that the commission's really got to weigh in and make a decision on this, Mayor. So we're just glad to get that before us tonight. There's been some delays, I think, in getting those proposals worked out. And matters of notice and all those things, but we're glad to be here, glad to be at this point. I know you and the board, Mayor and Alderman, have done a great job putting that together, and as well, our legal staff, and so it's time for us to get down and get to work and look at what we'll do. Sure.
One last comment. For the town of Jonesboro, whether this was set, financed at the plan the county has, or whether it's done as Jonesboro, it doesn't matter to us. It's all the same. My concern, as I said early on, is that it's really the position you'd be putting yourself in down the road if you approve an amount that's too low and that bid comes back, you're going to be back here having to approve this thing again, whether to offer more funding. We just think the most secure thing to do is set it at 32, pay the interest as you go, and it's less likely this thing's going to get derailed a year from now. That's why I think our proposal that, Danny's made the motion on, that's the safest one to just say tonight, yes, and then this thing's going to move forward, and the design committee's going to make it happen. If not, I'd say there's a 90% chance we're back here a year talking about the cost of it coming in higher than the 30.5 that's really allocated with the plan. And Joe described that perfectly. I appreciate him being straightforward on all that. That's really the decision we make. Do we want to have a little bit of room on top in case the bids come a little bit higher? It is unknown, as Joe says, or we want to set it down low, and I think you're just guaranteed it's going to come back, and we're going to have these people out here again. So I just ask you to support the Jonesboro plan and the amendments that we've offered, and we're offered to change that second one to what Commissioner Malone put forward, so we're definitely willing to be a good partner for you.
All right. Thank you, Mayor. Speaking of a little bit of room, Karen McMurray's here with us this evening. She's with Blackburn Children's Stegall, and Karen always has some enlightening matters. And when we talk about a little bit of room, Karen, can you tell us, I know we'd spoken about this earlier, but could you just tell us where we are? Can we afford this project? How much can we afford? When we talk about 32, when we talk about 32, 34, 32, what's the difference,
Well, we've looked at our amortization schedules, looking at it with 32 million or 34 million, and we've looked at the different time frames and tried to compare it to what the capacity is that you have now without raising taxes, and what it would look like if you did have to increase it to do that. Currently, if you did 34 million to come in with what you need to do to allow for some arrangement with Johnson City and the arrangement that you've planned for the maintenance of the facilities, you would need to go ahead and do the debt over 38 years, and that is pushing it out to the maximum amount. If you do the 32 million at 3%, you can knock 4 years off of that, which is a big savings in interest too, as was indicated earlier. The shorter time period, you've not borrowed the funds for that longer period of time. So if you did it for the 32 million and you did it over 34 years, you would still have the capacity within the plan that the school capital projects fund has without having to raise taxes right away.
All right.
Does that help?
When you say raising taxes right away, are we talking about a year,
well,
2 years, or
the
is
capital
that some time
project
away?
fund, as it stands right now, has in it an additional capital expenditure of about 14 million in the year 2023-24 year. So unless some of those changes maybe were modified once you get to the 2023-24 fiscal year, in order to accommodate that's already in that budget. This is in their long-range capital projects budget. At that time, you would have to raise some taxes to cover that.
So you're saying we're probably looking at 34 years is what we'd be considering?
If you do the 32 million at 3% for 34 years, that will give you enough capacity to cover an arrangement with Johnson City for any assistance and for the facilities agreement and for the bonded debt, so that all of those things would be covered without having to have a tax increase.
All right.
At 34 years. Yes.
Commissioner Harris?
When you said 32 or 34 million with an agreement with Johnson City, what amount?
I'm just saying if
what
you
amount
do
of-
something else to
what-
make up a difference for not splitting funds.
So, are you figuring in an additional amount to the 32 million for Johnson City? Or are you saying that 32 million period, that's all the capacity we have?
At 32 million, the capacity that you have for that, over the 30 years, your annual debt payment is going to be $1.6 million. What you have available is about $2.5 million. You've got another $500,000 that's going to have to go to the maintenance of the facilities. And then that just leaves you a little bit of cushion there, so.
What number are you using to come up with this, to say that we're giving Johnson City and this to say it's a cap?
I don't know if there's about $500,000 just to come up with a compromise with them. This wouldn't be splitting the funds like you would have done otherwise, but to have some level of capacity with them.
I appreciate those numbers, but I guess I'm a little confused, because I think what we're voting on tonight is the Jonesboro project, and I'm all for
Right.
helping Johnson City, and I think we can do that.
Right.
I want to do that, but, you know, when you're tying that in with this,
I was just trying to
I
come up with
appreciate
what
it,
your
but it's-
capacity would be for doing that. So, I mean,
So
whatever
you're-
you all decide on that is fine.
because we've never, approved
Right,
any amount, or even
right.
talked about an amount to
But-
Johnson City that I know of.
Right. The debt itself would be $1.6 million, and then you would have the facilities agreement for $500,000. That puts you at $2.1 million, and the maximum capacity that you have a year in the capital projects fund is around 2.5, 2.6 million.
So we've got around 500,000 a year in additional borrowing capacity that we can potentially work out a deal with Johnson City or spend it somewhere else, depending on what was approved. Thank you.
Are there any other questions on that?
All right. Any further questions for Karen? Thank you, Commissioner Ford.
You're saying that this can be accommodated with no tax increase for the term of this
If you go
agreement,
34 years. Just a little longer than what you've been talking about.
Yeah.
But it makes it a doable project without. No, I can't guarantee that. Please don't say that.
No, I'm just saying, I'm talking, but we're talking about that kind of money tonight. And my concern from all my taxpayers that's in my District 15 is about a tax increase.
Right,
And that's the reason why I asked you that question.
right. I can't guarantee there won't be one. Right now, it looks doable.
Huh.
34 years is a long time.
Yeah, it is.
Mr. Tester?
Yeah, I don't have,
Mr. Chairman, I just,
In thinking about this for the last month or two now, one of the thoughts that I've had, and it just came back to me as we're having this discussion with her, the whole point of the Capital Projects Fund creation in 2016, the way I understand it, was to start paying cash for more things and to long-term try to get us out of debt. Because we currently have $150 million in debt, roughly, currently, somewhere in that neighborhood. And that was the whole idea and goal of that. It's even, I think, written that way in our capital projects document. And we're sitting here talking about borrowing money through the town of Jonesboro for 30-some years. It's a long time, and that's a lot of interest money, too. And we're talking about using the capital project fund's money to do it, which it's just kind of a departure from what the goal of that was.
and you don't have to do the capital projects money. That was just one of the questions I had been asked. So I was just trying to show where that would fit. But it's up to you all, how you go about funding it.
Right.
Commissioner Malone?
It's just a point of clarification, I guess, because you referenced a $14 million capital expenditure at some point in the future. Am I correct in saying that that are the stadiums for the high school? Is that correct? Because obviously,
Yes.
that could happen the year you got it, or it could happen a year later, or a year
Right.
earlier, depending on.
I'm just looking at where it is on the schedule.
So in theory, were that, because we gotta understand, there's trade-offs here.
Right.
You may be trading a new school in Jonesboro now for delayed stadiums at the high school a few years later. So in theory, the 34 years is reduced if the stadiums are delayed past where it is on the schedule.
I'm just saying that if you do it over the 34 years that you are now, you probably are going to have a tax increase in that year. Again, I don't have a crystal ball and I can't say for sure. But if you don't want to use the capital projects fund, you can do a tax increase. That's just where the numbers are right now.
Those dollars that you were referencing were the stadiums.
Yes, they are.
And I guess, again, that's a future decision may be made by potentially, but, you know, that could happen in the year that it's on the capital projects calendar.
Or earlier or later.
Earlier or later, and that impacts 34 years.
It doesn't impact the 34 years as much as it impacts whether you're going to have a tax increase after that, because it's pushed out far enough. I think I just bring it to your attention for that purpose. But it is on the schedule, and you're right, it could be earlier, it could be later.
Any more questions for Karen?
Yeah, you know what would be the rate at 25 years, and what would the payment be for the 25?
Okay, we ran one at 20 and one at 24. I don't think we ran one at 25, but 24, the annual amount is $2 million.
$2 million. And what was the rate?
We did a 3% rate all the way across. I mean, 3%, no matter how many years we ran it, because the 3% had been the amount that had been agreed. Yes.
Earlier tonight said they would only do the $500,000 for 10 years. Is that taking into account the $500,000 after that?
This isn't taking into anything for the facilities agreement, because that would not be amortized and interest paid on it. This is taking into consideration just the lease payment that's funding the debt. And that lease payment will be covering the principal and interest on the bonded debt. So this was just an amortization on that piece. It does not include the facilities lease agreement. So that would be on top of it. So if you're looking at the 24 years, and it's $2 million a year to fund the building lease, then on top of that, you would have the facilities to pay for through some means, which would be another $500,000 a year. Is that making sense?
Yes.
And how much did you say we had available, 2.6?
It's what you have as capacity right now.
Capacity right now. So you'd be at 2.5 without anything for Johnson City, correct?
If you did the 24 years, yes.
If you've done 24 years, yeah. All right.
If the rate stays at 3%.
Right.
But it's not going to be needle.
Yeah, that's if it's at 3%, and if, there's a lot of ifs and all that, but these are the numbers, the best I could come up with.
Commissioner Tester.
I just wanted to ask one more question about that conversation about long-term debt. Our current debt service every year is somewhere around $11.5 million. Is that right? Do you know that? Somebody?
I'm not certain.
12?
Okay.
Okay, so $12 million a year we're paying right now towards debt and interest in our current budget with our current tax rate. So the long-term goal of getting us out of debt, to me, is a very good one, because as you do that, you can start moving some money that's going towards debt service into your budget, into your capital projects. So, I mean, $12 million a year is a lot of money that at the moment, we're not really, I mean, we're kind of getting benefit because it's things that we've done in the past, but in our current budget, we're not really getting benefit from that $12 million every year. And that's money that, as we pay the debt down, can go towards projects, operation budget, whatever. That's a lot of money.
It is a lot of money. Any more questions for Karen? She's not going far, so.
If
All
you
right.
have others, you can feel free to ask.
We're not gonna let you go far, Karen. All right. A couple of things I know our attorney was concerned about addressing was, I think we have some resolution, Culver, on the $1.5 million cap. Isn't that correct? I mean, did we feel like that with Mayor Vest here that was settled, or there's several different items left on our list on these amendments that Commissioner Edens is about to propose as an amendment. So I would like for us to go back to those a little bit before we move forward.
I think where you are, and I'll certainly defer to the county attorney, you originally had a motion for what Commissioner Edens proposed in the sheet, and that's what's on the floor.
No, just the original motion is on the floor, just the original proposal. These 10 would be going back and amending that original one. So we haven't made a motion for the amendment yet.
Okay.
But as we think about doing that, I think we need to get it fixed before we go back, hopefully with some agreement.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're going to have some motions to amend
The amendment.
the amendment, so to
Yes.
speak. There's been certainly discussion, and they cut a deal here a minute ago. Now, everybody has to approve that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's where you are. Is that how?
I think,
How do you think we are?
You were making a list of the issues that have been put on the floor. Since Commissioner Edens brought forward the amendments that were in this typed list, it was also shared that he didn't have the benefit of knowing that today there was an additional change made to the facilities lease, which would lessen that term. And then Mr. Schmid has brought forward that in section 1.2 of the building lease, that $1.5 million cap, Commissioner Malone brought to discussion that there would be ways to revise that language to remove the requirement on Jonesboro to put forward the additional amount, and then Mayor Vest commented on that. And then also Mr. Schmid brought forward with respect to a proposed provision 4.10, which would be wording that he passed around to you, designed to cap the total amount at $32 million. I think that those are the full list of amendments. Is that?
And the facilities lease, the 10-year.
That's correct. And then the facilities lease I touched on, that's not on the list of amendments. That would be a term of 10 years, not the full 38. But it's no longer tied to the length of the bond.
so maybe what would be best if we went ahead and took a motion for the amendment first.
Commissioner Edens' amendment, the original.
He has a motion for the resolution that he put on the floor. Now, Commissioner Edens, I don't think he's made a motion for the amendment yet. He has not. So I think if we're going to propose this amendment, I think it would be good to go ahead and offer that motion and second now and go ahead and get this amendment on the floor. And then we can come back and amend a few of these things in here before we make it the official amendment. Do you object? Or we can call a list of amendments. Commissioner Tester.
Just a point of clarification, I think an amendment also needs to be made. Don't want me to take words out of your mouth, but I think he's wanting to use the 1017 version as a starting point. And that would be an amendment as well, I believe, and somebody correct me if I'm wrong. But
My understanding is that we were going to use the resolution that's currently in your packet that was advertised.
which was the 1021 version.
Yes.
And that version, just so that you're all looking at the same contract, Commissioner Tester is correct that Jonesboro used the version dated October 17 when it revised its terms. And so when Mr. Schmid went through what's on the table today, which was noticed on the 21st, he has gone through a checklist and said, well, all the other things that the town has proposed are generally agreeable, except for these few that were listed out. So that the lease terms from October 17th are on the website. They're previously distributed, and the notice is broader. The notice encompasses broader terms and does not tie this commission to express provisions and wordings, but it does include amounts, property, who the seller is, up to a range of years. So I think that you do have the ability to use the terms from the 17th to bring it up to the version that the town had. But you're really, it's the same but different because you're going backwards from the one from the appendix today. Does that make sense? Or I confused you by trying to clarify?
I think what I understand was proposed for this meeting was the document that we refer to as the October 21st draft, which was distributed Monday.
Yes.
Excuse me. So the way I would interpret it is that's what has been proposed. To the extent the commissioner's list amends that, you're voting to amend the 21st draft. And to the extent you want to further amend this proposed amendment, you do it that way. The draft of the 17th was unilaterally proposed by the town, and that was 2 weeks ago.
Yes, I guess the draft that we have that we handed out last Monday that came out for the commission is the last draft that came out with a packet for the commission to consider this evening.
That was the basis for this meeting.
Yes. And I think if we need to amend that with this, as it was my understanding, with these amendments that have been negotiated terms of Jonesboro as of 10/17, there are still some changes in this list. Isn't that correct, Danny?
If I'm understanding correctly, the resolution 1910, we went through a meeting, everything that was agreed on, that I think there was most of what was in this attachment was agreed on after it came back from the meeting today. It was a suggestion from everybody.
If I'm understanding you right, the list of your list was what, that's what you're talking about, right? Yes. Your list. And these were things that were proposed to me in the October 25th draft, the Friday draft.
I know there's some things that you're still not right with, but there were no items in there that you said was acceptable.
Right, there are about 6 of the 8 are fine, and on here. Correct.
6 of the 8. If we could
Yes.
amend those 6 that are acceptable now,
And that's, I guess that's where I'm headed, you know. I don't,
Somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but we would be, talking about, facility lease coming in 10 years. As another amendment to this resolution, we'd be talking about the, cap on the design that was agreed to.
right?
In the conversation, that would come as another amendment to this, and is that the other two, or am I missing something?
The 1.5 million that we probably need to work at, yeah.
1.5 million.
And I think that was the only,
And the facility lease coming in 10 years, is that the other two, or am I missing something?
No, you're missing the new section 410 that I handed out, unless you stated I didn't hear it.
yes, that's right, the handout that he had.
Okay, and that would be,
Commissioner Tester?
The problem, I think, Commissioner Edens, is that these amendments that the town did today at 4 o'clock, they did them based off of the 1017 version.
I understand, but if they're agreeable.
Right. But what I was saying earlier is that the version that's attached to our resolution is the 1021 version. They started from a different basis point today than we have in our resolution. So we've got to figure out the difference between the two, or we've got to, I think, as our county attorney was saying, substitute the 17 for the 21 as a basis point. Am I saying that right?
Yes, and at the risk of giving you more paper, we do have a version comparing that because we got this today, and so that was one of the things looking at. But I think maybe what Mr. Schmidt is saying, you can take the version that you have as the appendix, which was 1021, and then he's walking you through the changes. Am I correct so far, Council? So
Yes.
he was taking you through those changes. If there's any difference between what Jonesboro said, you know, because the version from 1017 to 1021 is not that, excuse me, from 1021 to, good gravy, I apologize, I'm using these dates so quickly. The versions do not have that many differences between them. So I think what I'm hearing council propose is that he would walk you through the provisions from the version that's in front of them this evening. Is that correct?
You're amending the 1021 draft. That's the last draft that this meeting was based upon, that was sent to all the commissioners, went to the town. The town chose to go back to the 17th draft, but these issues, as outlined, I think we can address in either one of them.
I just felt better about it because the 1021 draft is what they have in their packet.
I
That's
would
the only
recommend
reason I
going
felt-
off that draft. If the town has some issues with the 1021 draft that are not mentioned here, then they'd have to bring them up.
Okay. Commissioner McAllister?
Mr. Chairman, would you mind if I would ask Mr. Wheeler in his role as attorney for Jonesboro, ask him some questions on his thoughts on this?
Absolutely not. Go ahead.
Would you mind helping us, your thoughts?
I think that'll work, except one thing that's not been talked about tonight and not been shown to them yet is there are provisions in that 1021 lease that were added for that version that were not accepted by the town that do not appear in these amendments.
We sent that lease out with all the changes we made. This is what you've sent back. I'm happy to discuss whatever's still there, but
Then I would
try
just
to
say,
respond to the town based on what you've given.
I'll tell you what, let's take about a 10-minute recess and see if we can't bring something back we can vote on. Let's take about 10 minutes.